Picture Marcelo Bielsa, one of the most cerebral, most revered tactical minds the sport has ever produced, sitting completely still on his cooler while stoppage time bleeds out around him. Uruguay, twice world champions, staring into the abyss, and on the opposite end of the pitch, a team from 10 islands scattered across the Atlantic that most people watching couldn't locate on a globe without considerable effort. A nation smaller in population than Bristol, 500,000 people, holding a two-time world champion to a draw and finishing the game on the front foot like they owned it. That image, Bielsa motionless, the Islanders dancing, is everything this World Cup has become. And the people running the tournament are sitting in their offices watching it unfold with a very specific kind of dread. Because they built this stage expecting a particular show, and the wrong cast is stealing it. Here's how the Underdogs hijacked the most expensive football tournament ever assembled, and why FIFA, despite every attempt to look thrilled about it, is quietly watching their business model take damage in real time. Start with the decision that created all of this, because that's where the story really begins. FIFA expanded the World Cup from 32 teams to 48, 12 groups, 104 matches instead of 64. The official announcement came wrapped in the language of inclusivity and global development, finally giving smaller footballing nations their moment, spreading the game's reach, bringing the World Cup to communities that had never experienced it before. Noble framing, genuinely persuasive if you don't look too closely at the mathematics underneath it. The mathematics were simple. More teams equals more matches. More matches equals more broadcast rights. More broadcast rights equals more money flowing into FIFA's accounts from networks around the world, desperate to fill airtime. More games also means more tickets, more sponsorship inventory, more everything that converts a football tournament into a revenue engine running at maximum capacity. The expansion was a commercial decision dressed in sporting language, and the sports media largely accepted the costume at face value. Here's the part that matters. The part FIFA will never say publicly, because the sentence would be genuinely embarrassing if it ever appeared in print. When they invited the smaller nations, the Cape Verdes, the Curaçaos, the teams from football's outer reaches who had spent generations watching this tournament from the outside, the actual expectation was that they would show up, provide some pleasant local color, absorb a few heavy defeats, contribute their allocated group stage matches to the broadcast schedule, and then disappear quietly before the serious business of the knockout rounds began. The Giants would handle the rest. The Spain versus Brazil quarterfinal. The Germany versus Argentina semifinal. The matchups that drive the massive TV audiences in the markets that actually move FIFA's commercial needle in the way that makes their partners genuinely happy. Bigger bracket, same result. More games for the money, then the Giants go deep for the money. Clean, profitable, predictable. That plan held together for approximately 90 minutes. Day one of the group stage, Cape Verde, the Blue Sharks, playing the first World Cup match in their country's entire history. Their opponents, Spain, reigning European champions, a squad that artificial intelligence models, betting markets, and the overwhelming consensus of football analysts had identified as the most likely team to lift the trophy at the end of this entire process. Pedri, Lamine, Yamal, Rodri. The kind of collective talent that makes watching a training session feel like a privilege. Cape Verde's starting goalkeeper is 40 years old. Their squad is assembled from 25 clubs across 14 countries. More of their players were born in Rotterdam than in their own capital city. They are a diaspora nation in the truest possible sense. A squad built from scattered pieces of a community spread across the world, unified by the flag of 10 Atlantic islands. Spain pressed, Spain had the ball, Spain created. And Cape Verde goalkeeper Vozinha made save after save, and the match ended goalless. Spain, in their World Cup opener, held to a draw by a team playing their first ever game at this level. The football world's first response was dismissive, Spanish rustiness. They'll find their level. Cape Verde was organized but limited and wouldn't hold up against proper opposition. Then came the Uruguay game, and the dismissive response became considerably harder to sustain. Uruguay are not a team you describe as proper opposition and leave it there. 2 World Cup victories, 15 Copa America titles, a squad containing players from Real Madrid, Manchester United, Tottenham, Bielsa on the touchline, a man with decades of elite coaching experience, a tactical reputation that other managers study the way students study texts, a presence on the bench that carries genuine weight. Cape Verde came into that match as the smaller, younger, less experienced nation by every measurable metric. 20 minutes in, Kevin Pena lined up a free kick from 28 yards. The Uruguayan wall made a collective decision that will be discussed in their dressing rooms for some time. The shot found the net. Cape Verde leading in a World Cup match against two-time world champions. In the stands, the goalkeeper's mother, who had spent weeks worrying whether she could afford the visa, watched her son's team take the lead against football royalty. Uruguay responded 2 goals, the natural order appearing to reassert itself, and then Cape Verde refused to read the script, pulled a goal back through Helio Varela's first-ever international goal, danced in celebration, and finished 8 minutes of stoppage time on the attack. 2-2, Bielsa staring at the ground. Uruguay, two-time world champions, facing genuine elimination from the group stage because a nation of 500,000 people refused to stay in their assigned lane. Let's talk about who Cape Verde actually are, because the story is extraordinary even before you factor in the football. An archipelago of 10 volcanic islands sitting 600 kilometers off the West African coast. Total population barely exceeding 500,000, with a diaspora of roughly equivalent size living abroad, a significant portion of them in the United States, which happens to be hosting their group stage matches. They qualified for this tournament the hard way, losing their opening qualifier, getting taken apart by Cameroon, and then winning 7 of their final 8 matches to finish above the 5-time African champions at the top of their group. The Blue Sharks earned this. They did not receive an invitation or benefit from a soft draw. They came through a proper qualification campaign against established continental nations and emerged at the top of it. Their squad represents what modern football migration looks like when it runs in reverse. Players born across Europe who chose to represent the islands their families came from. It is simultaneously a story about identity, about diaspora, about what happens when belonging becomes more powerful than geography. And they play like they believe in every single element of it. One win over Saudi Arabia and Cape Verde are in the knockout rounds of a World Cup they had never previously qualified for. The conversation has moved from nice to be here to how far can this actually go, with remarkable speed. And then there's Curaçao, which is, if anything, an even more extraordinary situation. A Caribbean island of approximately 156,000 people sitting off the coast of Venezuela. The smallest nation by population in World Cup history. To provide some dimensional context, the stadium hosting the final of this tournament holds more than half of Curaçao's entire population inside its walls at once. They arrived here having never won a World Cup qualifying match outside their immediate regional context. They lost their opening game against Germany 7-1, and that scoreline prompted the exact commentary FIFA's critics had been storing up for years. 7 goals. The format is a farce. These teams don't belong. The tournament is being diluted for commercial reasons, and the evidence is right there on the scoreboard. 6 days later, Curaçao held Ecuador to a goalless draw. The goalkeeper's name is Eloy Room. He is 37 years old. He spent the majority of his professional career as a backup. The player whose primary function for much of a decade was to keep training intensity honest for the starter ahead of him. Against Ecuador, a squad containing defenders who play for Arsenal and Paris Saint-Germain, Room made 15 saves. 15. The most by any goalkeeper in 90 minutes of World Cup football since official records began in 1966. 1 save short of the all-time record, which was set during extra time. Room came within a single intervention of rewriting history entirely. The King and Queen of the Netherlands were present in the stands. The Queen reportedly embraced Room in the dressing room after the final whistle. The head coach, who at 78 years old is the oldest manager in World Cup history, wept openly and said his players had come from nothing and given everything. Room asked about his performance afterward, said he deserved a statue on the island. He was not entirely wrong. One commentator, searching for language that could adequately capture a 156,000-person island nation holding a point at a World Cup, arrived at this. A boulder in the sea has a point at the tournament. Now here's the tension that FIFA is actually navigating, and the reason nightmare is not excessive language for their situation. The tournament they designed for financial expansion was built on a straightforward assumption: bigger bracket, more matches in the group stage, but the same hierarchy ultimately reasserting itself when the knockout rounds begin and the serious commercial value is generated. More doors for the small teams to enter through, but the same teams occupying the rooms that matter at the end. What they did not calculate for was the rule change that accompanies the format expansion. In a 48-team tournament, the top 2 teams from each group advance, and critically, so do the 8 best third-place finishers across all 12 groups, which means a team does not need to win their group, does not even need to finish second. A single remarkable result, One clean sheet, one draw against a vastly superior opponent can be enough to keep a small nation's World Cup alive long enough to reach the bracket where upsets become genuinely possible. FIFA built more doors. The small teams are walking through every single one. The consequences are landing on nations. FIFA would very much prefer to be generating second-round broadcast value. Turkey, identified before the tournament as a credible dark horse, is already eliminated. Belgium, assembled from arguably the deepest generation of talent the country has ever produced, is facing an exit that would have seemed inconceivable 12 months ago. Uruguay, two-time world champions, Bielsa on the bench, a squad that any objective analyst would place among the tournament's genuine contenders, requires results to go their way because a nation smaller than most European cities earned a draw that changed the group entirely. The Giants are going home. The Islanders are staying. That is the opposite of what the commercial model required. History tells you why this matters beyond the immediate tournament context, because the underdog run is not a footnote to World Cup history. It is the thing people actually remember. Costa Rica in 2014, placed in a group with three former world champions, Uruguay, Italy, and England, topped it. Sent Italy and England home in the group stage, added Uruguay in the round of 16, and reached a quarterfinal that required a penalty shootout to end. A country of 5 million people with a budget that would not cover the annual wages of a single elite European club's starting 11. Reaching the last 8 of the world's most watched sporting event, Morocco in 2022, the first African and Arab nation in history to reach a World Cup semifinal, beating Spain on penalties, eliminating Portugal with a single goal that sent Cristiano Ronaldo home in tears, defeating Belgium along the way. An entire continent watching through the night as a team that was supposed to provide competent opposition proved it was something significantly more than that. South Korea in 2002, reaching the semifinals on home soil. Croatia, a country of 4 million people, producing 2 final appearances and a semifinal across a generation of football that punched so far above its weight, the mathematics of it barely make sense. These are the moments that define the tournament. They are the reason television audiences in countries with no stake in the results stay up until midnight watching matches that do not concern them. The upset is the product. The giant killing is why the World Cup is the greatest show in sport rather than merely the most expensive one. Pull all of this together, and the irony that has emerged from this tournament becomes almost too precise to have been accidental. FIFA designed a bigger World Cup to extract more money from the established giants of world football. More matches featuring Spain and Brazil and Germany and France generating broadcast revenue across the markets that matter to sponsors. The small teams were structural filler. They gave the expanded format legitimacy, they provided the inclusivity narrative, they sold tickets in their local markets for group stage games, and then they were supposed to leave. Instead, the format FIFA constructed to serve the giants has accidentally built the most hospitable environment for giant killers the tournament has ever seen. The qualifying structure, the advancement rules, the sheer number of available paths into the knockout rounds, all of it combines to give a team that produces one heroic performance, one extraordinary goalkeeper display, one tactical masterpiece against a superior opponent, a genuine route to survival. Cape Verde, 500,000 people, 10 Atlantic islands, a squad assembled from the global diaspora are one result from the last 32. Curaçao, 156,000 people, a goalkeeper who spent a decade as a backup, have a point on the board and a legitimate mathematical path forward. Every step they take into the knockout rounds is a step a wealthier, larger, more commercially attractive nation takes out of the tournament and onto an early flight home. That is the nightmare. Not that the format failed to deliver quality football, it has in ways nobody expected. The nightmare is that it worked exactly as designed for exactly the wrong teams. The doors FIFA opened for the minnows are the doors the giants are watching close behind them. And for everyone watching who has no particular attachment to the pre-tournament favorites, no loyalty to the commercial hierarchy, no investment in the result FIFA's broadcast partners were hoping for, this is the best thing about the entire tournament, the one genuinely joyful, unscripted, unmanufactured element of a World Cup that has generated considerable controversy around everything else surrounding it. The underdogs didn't hijack this tournament by accident. FIFA handed them the tools. They just showed up and used them better than anyone expected. Which underdog are you following? Are the Blue Sharks making the last 32? Or do you think the Giants find another gear before the groups close? Let me know in the comments, and subscribe if you want World Cup coverage that follows both the football and the money. Because at this tournament, the most interesting story is where those two things stop running in the same direction.